Welcome to the Creative Commons RX podcast. Before diving into this episode, I want to ensure we're all on the same page. This is for general informational purposes only and does not constitute the practice of medicine, nursing, or other professional healthcare services, including the giving of medical advice. No doctor-patient or pharmacist-patient relationship is formed. Using this information and the materials linked to this podcast is at the user's risk. The content on this podcast is not intended to substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Users should not disregard or delay in obtaining medical advice from any medical condition they have, and they should seek the assistance of their healthcare professionals for any such conditions. Clinical experts created the references, content, and clinical insight. NotebookLM, a Google AI tool, created the audio content, which I extensively reviewed before release. Finally, the host states that he takes all conflicts of interest seriously. Currently, there are no conflicts to disclose. For all of his disclosures and the companies he invests in or advises, he directs users to reach out independently, where he keeps an up-to-date and active list of all disclosures.
For so long, we've all been drilled on the cardiac arrest algorithm. But what happens after we get a pulse back? Well, the new 2025 European Resuscitation Council guidelines are here, and believe me, they are about to change everything we thought we knew about post-arrest care. This is way more than just a minor update. It's a huge leap forward into precision medicine.
Look, we all know the ACLS algorithms inside and out, but this 2025 update is really pushing us to think beyond the code. It's asking a crucial question. Once that pulse is back, how do we fine-tune every single thing we do to save not just the life, but the quality of that life? We're moving away from a one-size-fits-all protocol to something much more tailored to the individual patient.
So where do we start? The first huge area of change is in that immediate aftermath, right after you achieve return of spontaneous circulation, or ROSC. This is that critical window where everything we do next can make or break the outcome. And the new playbook is way more nuanced than it's ever been.
All right, first up, let's talk about oxygen. This is a big one. For decades, the mantra was pretty simple. More is better. Just blast the patient with 100% O2. But now we know that hyperoxia, that's too much oxygen, can actually cause its own damage, its own reperfusion injury. So the new guideline is crystal clear. We have to stop the brute force approach. The goal now is all about fine-tuning. We need to be titrating oxygen to a very specific target, an SpO2 of 94 to 98%, and do it as soon as we possibly can.
And this theme of precision carries right over to our next big decision, the cath lab. The old knee-jerk reaction was to rush pretty much any patient with a suspected cardiac cause for an angiogram. But the guidelines now draw a really critical line in the sand. If there's no ST elevation on that post-ROSC ECG, the priority shifts. We don't just rush anymore. Instead, we focus on stabilizing the patient and, get this, consider an immediate whole-body CT scan. This wait-and-see approach gives us a chance to find other killers, like a massive PE or brain bleed, and it can prevent a risky and maybe totally unnecessary procedure.
Okay, so getting a pulse back, that's just the first victory. The real battle, so often, is for the brain. And the 2025 guidelines dedicate a huge amount of focus to this, really moving us toward a much more careful, much more comprehensive way of figuring out a patient's neurologic prognosis.
The core concept here, the big buzzword, is multimodal neuroprognostication. Now that sounds complicated, right? But the idea is actually super simple. The days of relying on just one thing, like the clinical exam alone, are completely over. And why is that? Because no single predictor is perfect. The new standard of care is to layer multiple, independent pieces of evidence, the exam, the EEG, biomarkers, imaging, to build a complete, robust picture. And this isn't just about being thorough. It's about avoiding the single most devastating mistake we can possibly make, a falsely pessimistic prediction that leads us to withdraw care too early.
So what does this actually look like in practice? Well, think of it like building a case. It's a systematic layering of evidence. We always start with our clinical exam. That's our foundation. But then we add the objective data. We look at the brain's electrical function with an EEG, we look at its chemistry with biomarkers, and we look at its actual structure with a CT or an MRI. And we can even test specific nerve pathways with tools like somatosensory evoked potentials. So you see, it's not just a checklist, it's a careful, methodical investigation, where every step adds another layer of certainty to what is truly a life-altering decision.
And when we layer all this evidence together, a few very specific patterns can emerge that are highly predictive of a poor outcome. These are the major red flags we're now trained to look for. For example, a bilaterally absent N20 wave on an SSCP. That is a very grim sign. The same goes for a flat-out suppression or a burst suppression pattern on the EEG once the sedatives have cleared. Or, of course, clear evidence of massive brain swelling on a CT scan. These are the kinds of definitive signs we're looking for.
Now, speaking of biomarkers, here's a number you need to burn into your memory. This is a huge clinical pearl from the new guidelines. A neuron-specific enolase, or NSE level, that's greater than 60 micrograms per liter, measured between 48 and 72 hours after the arrest, well, that is now a strongly suggested threshold for predicting a poor outcome. It's a powerful quantitative piece of that big puzzle we're putting together.
But, science never stops moving. While NSE is our current standard, the guidelines are already highlighting an exciting new player, neurofilament light chain, or NFL. Early studies are showing it might actually be a better predictor than NSE. And here's the kicker. Unlike NSE, its levels aren't falsely jacked up by hemolysis, when red blood cells break down in the blood sample. That makes it a potentially much more robust and reliable test. So definitely keep an eye on this one. You're going to be hearing a lot more about it.
All right, let's switch gears a bit, because we all know not every cardiac arrest is the same, right? The new guidelines put a massive emphasis on tailoring our response to the specific cause of the arrest. This is where resuscitation gets really specialized.
Now this is a total game changer. In traumatic cardiac arrest, the standard algorithm gets flipped completely on its head. That compression's first rule we've all learned, it goes out the window. And why? Because in trauma, the heart likely stopped because of a mechanical problem, not an electrical one. So the absolute #1 priority is this: starting chest compressions cannot, under any circumstances, delay fixing the underlying problem, whether that's catastrophic bleeding or a tension pneumothorax. We have to treat the cause, not just chase the rhythm.
And the new guidelines are full of these kinds of practical tools. For maternal cardiac arrest, check this out, the new 4Ps mnemonic. This is just an incredibly powerful cognitive aid to have in a super high-stress situation. It forces us to immediately think through the unique causes of arrest in a pregnant patient: preeclampsia, sepsis, placental or uterine problems, and peripartum cardiomyopathy. So helpful.
And this tailored approach just continues for other tricky situations. For accidental hypothermia, VA ECMO is now strongly recommended as the rewarming treatment of choice. For poisonings, the big focus is on rescuer safety first, then considering specific antidotes like lipid emulsion for local anesthetic toxicity. And for a massive pulmonary embolism that causes an arrest, the recommendation is clear. Give fibrinolytics, those clot busters, during CPR, and you've got to consider eCPR as a potential rescue therapy.
And finally, we get to what might be the most important and maybe the most overdue part of this whole update. It's about what happens next. The 2025 guidelines are extending the chain of survival far, far beyond the hospital doors, with a new and profound focus on the survivor's journey to recovery.
There's this amazing recognition in these new guidelines that our job isn't done at discharge, not even close. It's about helping someone reclaim their entire life. This means a new, comprehensive focus on recovery. The guidelines are now calling for systematic screening of all survivors for physical, cognitive, and emotional deficits. They're recommending referrals to specialized neurorehab, integrated cardiac rehab, and actively managing these debilitating long-term issues like chronic fatigue. It's a whole new world of post-arrest care.
And this quote from the guidelines themselves, wow, it just says it all, doesn't it? It's such a powerful reminder that rehabilitation isn't just about the patient. It's about their family, it's about their community, it's about all of us. Every single piece of function, no matter how small, that we can help a survivor regain, creates this massive positive ripple effect.
So, that's where we are. The 2025 guidelines really leave us with this one big thought-provoking question. We are getting better and better at mastering the science of survival, of bringing people back from the very brink of death. But our next challenge, the next great frontier, is to perfect the art of recovery, of helping them truly live again. And that's a question we're all going to be working together to answer.
This is for general informational purposes only and does not constitute the practice of medicine, nursing, or other professional healthcare services, including the giving of medical advice. No doctor-patient or pharmacist-patient relationship is formed. Using this information and the materials linked to this podcast is at the user's risk. The content on this podcast is not intended to substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Users should not disregard or delay in obtaining medical advice from any medical condition they have, and they should seek the assistance of their healthcare professionals for any such conditions. Clinical experts created the references, content, and clinical insight. NotebookLM, a Google AI tool, created the audio content, which I extensively reviewed before release. Finally, the host states that he takes all conflicts of interest seriously. Currently, there are no conflicts to disclose. For all of his disclosures and the companies he invests in or advises, he directs users to reach out independently, where he keeps an up-to-date and active list of all disclosures.